Okay, tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate that there's a large number of people who have tuned in. This is the final Eco Index webinar. So my name is Penny Payne, and I was a social scientist and impact analyst for Eco Index, and I'll be your host and facilitator for today. The purpose of this webinar is to run through our digital products and what you can use them for and where you can find them. And so shortly I'll pass over to Corey, who's going to go through a mihi and karakia, and then on to Kitty, who will provide a bit of context for how we've arrived here, and then on to Catherine, who's going to explain to us the digital resources and where you can find them. Just in terms of etiquette, if you can mute yourself if you're not speaking, just to reduce that background noise. And in terms of questions, you can either type them in the chat there and or wait till the end to ask them, and I will field them as we can, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end as well. We'll kick off and I'll pass over to Corey.
Tēnā tātou, e ngā karanga maha, e ngā rangatira, e ngā hua, no ngā hau e whā, nau mai, hara mai, piri mai, whakatata mai, whakahonohono mai ki tēnei hui, tēnei kauhau, tēnei kōrero o te whakamutunga o tō mātou nei kaupapa ko Eco Index. Koe, ko Koi Ruha tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei whakaheke no te aroa mātātua me tainui waka. Ka huri ki te reo Pākehā mō te marama o te katoa. So, kia ora everyone, my name's Koi Ruha. I'm one of the directors and also one of the data scientists of Eco Index, and just wanted to welcome everyone to our final webinar and our final talk before we close down Eco Index. So just to kick us off, I will put us into a state for karakia, and then I'll also be closing our session today with karakia. So, kia hihiri mai tātou mō tēnei karakia whakatīmata. Tui, 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 tui a, tui runga, tui roto, tui waho, tui te here tangata, ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te ao. Tui tumuka tangata I tanke o mai, Hawaii ki nui, Hawaii ki roa, Hawaii ki pāmāmā. Nau mai te hitua hitua no te mana te tapu, paupau a mai ki roto I ni taura I tēnei wā, uhi, wero, oho mai te mauri, haumi e, hui e, tāiki e. Ka pai. And with that, I will pass it over to Kitty to open us up with a bit of context. Kia ora mā.
Kia ora, Corey, and hello to everyone. Let's move to our next slide, please. Yes, so kia ora koutou. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kitty Joy Wallace. I'm also a director of Eco Index, and I have the pleasure here of just sharing a little bit about our journey and how we got to this state, and then we'll dig into the open access content we're putting out there. So I'm getting a little bit of feedback if we can. Yes, thank you. Just keeping those mutes on is really helpful. Okay, so you can see in our little timeline here when we started. And we actually had an interesting origin story as a research program in the Biological Heritage National Science Challenge. So we are a legacy of that public funding, that public investment. And when that ended in 2024, we became a spinoff as a purpose-driven company and realized about a year later that we wanted to go a step further with the manifestation of our kaupapa. And so we became a charitable company. And that was to ensure that all of the revenue that we brought in was redistributed for the good of society and the environment. And then, of course, here we are today, talking with all of you. Passing the torch is how we would like to think of this, hoping that the kaupapa can be continued in many more veins and multiplied through the fantastic work that all of you do. So all through this journey, our vision has been to weave knowledge and people to revolutionize investment for Te Taio, and we hope maybe that can be something that's kind of in the heart of our content as it moves out into the open access space even more than it has been. And we hope that we can make it really clear and easy for you to engage with what we are leaving behind. So the idea is maximum impact for society and the environment. And so because this is the goal, it's perfectly fine to make content derivatives, to provide services, and to sell these things as you use our open access content. So they're not locked up without any resale possibility. And again, this is for maximum impact. So I hope you can bear that in mind with whatever ways you are envisioning. Maybe you can find something today useful. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit about our impact just in the time since we've become a company after the research program. There's a little bit more that will be available on our website, a little bit more comprehensive, but just to help share our story a little bit before we move on with the webinar. We've received about 1.24 million in revenue and donations during this time. And we've analyzed through our various tools and code about 6.8 million hectares of Aotearoa. So we've gotten pretty familiar with a lot of the geography around the place, and happy to say had about 16,000 website visits and 173 downloads from our data center. Hopefully that's going to skyrocket after today's webinar, and so you will go there and be making the most of what's open access there. During this time, we've engaged with hundreds of different entities. It's been fantastic, and worked quite closely with about 21 partners. That's in this 2025 to 2026 span. And we have also completed an SROI, or a social return on investment analysis. And that showed that for each dollar that was invested in us as an entity, it returned about $11.20 of social, environmental, and cultural value to the country over the next 20 years. So this is all about recognizing the ripple effects of the choices and investments that we've made, and we hope that those will continue, of course, through the work that you guys might do with our open access products. Next slide, please. So also in this vein, a really huge mihi nui. Thank you to so many of you here attending this webinar, and many others, so many people and organizations who've been part of this journey, who've supported us to make the things happen that we've done. And lots of logos are here. There's lots more that we could put here too. It just became kind of too squashed, but it's just to show how much a lot of us have come together and at different points touched in to make these products. So in that vein, there's been really, we should recognize, a major investment in the digital products of EcoIndex, and we hope that that means to you that you can see there's been lots done, and maybe just with a small lift you can adopt and do even more. Thanks, Ash. Yeah, so the idea here is making these things open access can empower you to scale up the environmental care that you're involved with, the investment, the advice, wherever it is that you are in the value chain, the number of trees you plant, what kinds you plant. Let's scale this up to think landscape level for the benefit of biodiversity, and be able to use tech wherever we can to make this really go as far as it can. So I will leave it there. Thank you all. It's been an absolute honor to be part of this, and I'll hand over to Catherine.
Classic, still muted. Kia ora kiri, and mihi nui kia koutou tēnei wā. Thank you everyone for making the time to join us today. We've been a bit overwhelmed, to be honest, with all the registrations, and your attendance is valued and gives us hope, and we're quite excited that all of you, or a large majority, will pick something up today and run with it, make it your own, and improve your impact potential. So this is our snapshot screen of our open access content. That includes GIS layers and code, and as Kitty referred to, it's under a Creative Commons license, the one listed there. We chose this license because it does require attribution, and not because we want a pat on the back, but because we thought it would be really valuable to see the value of the public investment that we began with and how it does trickle through different work streams over time. Hopefully this isn't too onerous. It's simply just one line somewhere saying where the work that you've built on has come from, and yeah, we'd like to see what you do with it. So we're looking at here is our collection of 9 digital products, and the arrows represent where particular layers or products feed into others. For example, here with Navigator, it includes quite a few layers and data sets, including these 4 that are shown here. So simply all we're going to do today is go through each of these at an introductory level and then let you know where to find more information and where to download them for yourselves. And we do anticipate a good chunk of time at the end for Q&A. First up is Observer, and this is our remote detection piece of work. So we developed 2 AI-driven models to detect remotely native vegetation and vegetation. The first one is the furthest developed, and it detects mature native forests, and it's based on Planet satellite imagery. This is ready to run, and we have been deploying it for various clients and partners, but it does require human validation of the results, and it works best at catchment scale. The second one is a newer piece of work, which we're calling MVP, regeneration detection. So targeted at detecting younger vegetation, and we're at the minimal viable product stage. So this works with Google Earth imagery, and some further R&D will be required, but this could be really, really impactful if we can remotely detect young plantings, for example. You can find more about these 2 remote detection models on GitHub, and also download the code there. Next up is our showcase, our top pet, our Navigator X. So these are mapping tools, and they help you locate the best places for reconstructing native ecosystems from scratch. So we're not talking about restoration of fragments that already exist. This is when you want to increase the native vegetation cover on your landscape. And they utilize a heat mapping approach, which allows you, as a user, to choose your own priorities, or data layers, if you like, to align with your own project goals. So they provide robust, data-driven framework. And we've put loads of time and thinking into this, loads of expertise from ecologists, data scientists, economists, user design experts. And we really hope that this investment is something you can pick up and run with, because they could be adopted and applied to pinpoint locations for any kind of project, like nature-based solutions, wetlands maybe, to intercept floodwaters or runoff. It could be used for priority biodiversity projects, corridors and stepping stones, maybe a requirement under the National Policy Statement on Indigenous Biodiversity or natural planning bills, erosion prevention, loads and loads of things. And it's just a very smart, objective, data-driven way to approach that prioritization piece of work. And in doing so, maximize the outcomes from your investment of time, energy, and funds. So a little bit more detail on these 2. Navigator is the GIS version of the tool. They use the same data. The Navigator is operated in ArcGIS or QGIS. It's 2D, and it can be integrated into your own system, where you can, through coding or in the GIS layers themselves, change the weighting of the scoring which leads to the heat map, or bring in your own data layers to incorporate maybe your own boundaries or priority biodiversity sites or similar. And in doing so, you'll have the full analytical power of GIS and your GIS technicians. And Navigator X is our browser-based tool. So this one runs, is coded to run in Mapbox, and you can see an example of it on our website, Navigator X for Waitaha Canterbury. You can experience Navigator X, the same data and the same heat map style and user interface, but in 2D or 3D. And we've found that the 3D interface is really appealing to people who want to calibrate their own knowledge of their landscape with what the data is indicating. This is all also available for customization, with a note that you'd need knowledge of coding and the Navigator GIS data to be able to do that. But like I said, excellent for sharing and collaboration. And these are available to download as GIS layers in the GIS code and the code for Mapbox. You can find those download links on our website, and that's going to be the same message for all of this. Our website's the place to go for the links for downloading anything. Okay, so next up, and we're going to jump into GIS layers primarily now, is our eco-index catchments. So this, we spent quite a bit of time trying to come up with a tidy and pragmatic catchment layer for sea draining catchments. And we took the layer that came out of the Freshwater Ecosystems of New Zealand work, which is hosted by NFE, and we improved it, simplified, and made it more useful for real life applications. So if you need a catchment layer that's slightly different to the existing ones and is focused on sea draining characteristics, this could be helpful. And it is included, if you're downloading Navigator, this is part of that tool. Next is land cover snapshot. And so this was intended and has been used to give a very broad overview of the landscape ecosystem cover. So it shows mature ecosystems, regenerating ecosystems, reconstruction opportunities. That's where it's physically possible to do reconstruction. It does not infer landowner willingness or land ownership. And then built up in transport areas. So a real lovely snapshot of where should we focus, where could we rebuild, reconstruct native ecosystems. And it's derived from LCDB5, and again, available on our website and included with Navigator. Next is our ecosystem 15% cover goal. And this is based on a lot of work we put into deciding how Eco-Index will guide the reconstruction of native ecosystems. We settled on 15% cover of every ecosystem type that belongs in every catchment of those sea draining catchments we saw earlier is required if we actually want biodiversity to thrive. So that is, when you split it down to catchment scale, that's actually a greater requirement than some of the sort of higher targets that apply to national scale. And the reason we chose 15% is when you drop below 15% cover of any given ecosystem, the loss of species that depend on that ecosystem, live within it, speeds up dramatically. And then you're looking at a much larger and more expensive task to manage and restore them. And we've captured our full rationale. The link is there, and these slides will be available on our website in the coming days. And so this layer, we put this into GIS so that it can just immediately show you with a click on, click off, where the areas are that are currently below 15%. And so where the ecosystem reconstruction that you do would benefit their representation in that area. It's also displayed on the ecosystem reconstruction map, which is a public map on our website. And in that, it actually specifies the targets for each ecosystem that need to be reconstructed to meet 15% in hectares. So how many hectares of kahikatea mato forest, for example, are needed? And again, available on our website and included with Navigator. Next up is the ecosystem projector. So this is kind of following the logic of, okay, I know where I could need to do ecosystem reconstruction, which native ecosystems should I consider reconstructing, especially in landscapes where there's been widespread clearance. So this indicates which ecosystems and where they could be reconstructed at a landscape scale. It's not great for the variation within one paddock, for example, but it answers that question. Which ecosystems should I reconstruct? It's built from the potential natural vegetation layer for New Zealand with improved delineation of different wetland types. And because it doesn't go down to the superfine scale, we do recommend consulting local experts to understand those fine scale patterns, but this is an excellent first start. It is also available via our website for download and within Navigator. And it's live within the ecosystem reconstruction map. So you can jump on there and explore it before downloading, for example. Okay, next up is the ecosystem services valuer. And this GIS tool provides New Zealand dollar valuations for 23 of the possible ecosystem services from 33 different native ecosystems. And you can see them listed here. Not all of them are available for every ecosystem based on data availability or whether it's relevant for that ecosystem, but it's a really useful tool for estimating and communicating the value of nature and improving the integrity of cost-benefit analyses. And it comes in 2 layers, so it can or two versions, and it can be applied to existing native ecosystems to answer the question, what is the value of ecosystem services from this existing native ecosystem, forest, wetland, duneland, whatever it might be, but also that potential natural vegetation layer to consider, if I was doing a reconstruction project, which of maybe my two options will create more ecosystem services for Te Taiao, for the community, for the environment, and for the economy. Again, available to download now. So along the logic of, okay, now we're planning this project and we know how much ecosystem services might be worth, how much is it going to cost to initiate, to do this work? And we have two costing tools. The first is the reconstruction costings, and that helps you cost up different scenarios based on the core activities that normally go with an ecosystem reconstruction project, which are initial plantings, early care, and fencing. And that provides those as like one-time costs per hectare. So it just helps with that cost-benefit analysis again. And alongside it is the maintenance costings, which provides average costs, not one-offs, but average costs for fence maintenance and the management of non-native plant and animal species. So this could be applied to existing restoration projects, existing ecosystems, or the ones you're planning to reconstruct. And then we have, as mentioned a couple of times already, our ecosystem reconstruction map. And this was publicly launched a couple of years ago, so quite likely you may have already heard about it or explored it. It's online and available on our website. And it visualizes some of the data sets we've already talked about, but it does turn the land cover snapshot into priority areas based on 15% cover. So it goes one step further in terms of highlighting the areas where, or the regions, or the parts of certain regions where the most work is needed in terms of biodiversity. So it's great for understanding those catchment scale patterns. And we've gone a little bit further, you can see in this little box here, to specify what the reconstruction priority is in this location, how much reconstruction is needed to achieve 15% cover, and then in the live map you can scroll down and learn a little bit about those ecosystems. And so that the whole map is available on our website, and Tūhono Taiao also host the priority layer and the catchment scale costing layer in their portal. So if you're a Tūhono Taiao user, you can click on some of these layers on that website. Okay, so how do we find this? As mentioned, you can visit our website, and it's a good starting place. We will continue building out sort of the directions and the links next week, but there is a starting place there already. So it provides the content and explainers and links to coordinates, and that's where you'll find all GIS layers, to GitHub for any code and readmes, and to our digital product guide and product deep dive, which provide the descriptions and development methods respectively. So you should be able to answer most of your questions with these resources, but it's important to note here that the EcoIndex website and coordinates accounts close 1 year from now. So you've got a year to get what you need from there. GitHub will remain open. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Penny. Thanks everyone for your attention. Kia ora.
Kapai. Thanks, Catherine. That was a great explainer. All right, so I see we've had some questions in the chat, but it looks like all of them have been answered so far. Would anyone like to unmute and ask a question? We've got everyone here right now. Thanks for all the applauses. Thanks, Kirsty.
Just to address Mario's comment on wanting the website to stay around longer, I'm not sure if that would be up to us because we prepaid for that spot, didn't we? We prepaid for everything so that it will stay open for a year. So it's sort of, we close it down and then I wouldn't really know how to bring it back if we wanted to. Is that right? Am I getting that right? Anyone jump in there?
Yeah, I think that's right.
That's correct.
Yeah, so Mario, because we prepaid for the website to be open for a year long, unless money comes in before next Wednesday, for us to extend it even further, then yeah, honestly, I wouldn't even know how to extend it out further than that because we'll have shut everything down by then. So it'll just be going on from our prepayment to the website gods.
And can you answer Gmo's question as well, Corey? Are training data sets, data pipelines in place to help with continued refinement?
I guess that's to do with Observer, and I guess that's to do with the data that we use to train Observer. Not for the MVP regeneration detector. So there are privacy. There's policy around privacy for the data that we use to train that detector. But in terms of Observer native forests, I'm actually not sure. That's a good Kevin question for what data sets we use to train that, and if that is available on the GitHub.
Oh, Kevin is saying he can't unmute himself. So
Oh,
maybe
just type it in the chat, Kevin.
You should be able to unmute now, Kevin, sorry.
There we go. Sorry about that. I was panicking slightly. Yeah, no, just to talk about exactly what you said there, Corey. So certain data sets that we have used have been taken from sort of agreement under privacy, so we weren't allowed to upload those, but we've done our best to sort of verbally describe how to rebuild those data sets. So it should still be replicable, even though not exactly replicable. If with Observer, yeah, like Corey said, that's all based on open source LCDB, which is all in the repository as well. So hopefully we've done as close of a job as we can to trying to make those data sets able to be improved upon and continued.
Thanks, Kevin. And is this next one a you question, Catherine? Can you say more about the data that the ecosystem valuer uses to estimate dollar values from Kevin?
Kia ora, Kevin. The data came from, well, the tool is built off the back of a 2024 study that was built off the back of a 2016 study that used international data sets, almost 10,000 data sets to apply a benefit transfer model to quantify those ecosystem services values. And our team, not myself, but our economist Jay Whitehead and senior ecologist Karen Denia worked quite hard to translate them and convert them as best they could in a sort of a calibration exercise to make sense for Aotearoa, New Zealand. This is documented on our website in the product deep dive and in the digital product guide as well. So that's been quite well captured as well, along with the caveats involved in any kind of method for ecosystem services valuation. But it does provide a very consistent way to consider these ecosystem services and their values, yeah.
I'll just jump in and add to that it's widely recognized as one of the best, if not the best, international resource for ecosystem services. So it's nice because it is a way for those of us who want to translate back to the international framework with our evaluations. It's recognized there.
Wonderful. And now might be a good time to just flick onto the next slide. We've got a question from Mario saying, thanks, Corey, how can I get in touch with you? So that's just a good time to mention that a lot of the team are actually currently contracting, and so here's the contact details if you do want to get in touch with them.
And the recording of this webinar and the slides will be on our homepage next week. Okay, so you don't want to write notes, or you've missed something if you join late.
And then Catherine, maybe another you question, is there a layer that provides information about the relative health or functioning of existing forest or wetland environments?
Short answer is no. Longer answer is unfortunately no. We tried really hard to bring together enough biodiversity related data to be able to present that information in like a national level health check or well-being, an idea of biodiversity well-being. But the task was too large and very, very difficult with inconsistent data and many other hurdles. So we don't have data sets for those existing ecosystems, unfortunately. That's why we pivoted to focus on reconstruction of missing ecosystems. Good question, then.
Thanks, Catherine. And then just another question from Keith. If hosting via coordinates is a funding issue, what would be involved in migrating the system to a site such as EcoNet? Oh yeah, and Kitty's replied. I think we looked into that, and I think it might be a little bit too complicated in this remaining time that we have left as EcoIndex. Is that correct, Kitty?
Yeah, that's right, because we literally have 1 week till we close. So we wanted to make sure we had a really clear pathway for anyone who wanted coordinates downloads from our website right now. But there is a possibility still of having multiple places where these layers are available. We're happy for that to be the case, but it just might mean that others will need to reach out to the team members on here, on the slide you're seeing right now, to make separate arrangements to do that. And there's no funding earmarked to do that either. So a couple barriers there, but we're not bothered if the layers go wide and far. I might also just address, there's been like several questions about keeping coordinates open, keeping the website open past the March 2027 deadline. I put something into the chat there, but the feeling is really that a lot of these products, like because they're so tech, either built with tech or using tech in various ways, they're going to be aging, right? They have a shelf life. And so what really we're looking to you guys to do is take them during this year and build on them, improve them. They will be getting out of date in a year. There'll be better layers, public data sets to integrate into some of them, et cetera. Way better algorithms for doing the AI model, the machine learning modeling in a year. So I think keeping the website open after a year with just still the same old content may not actually have that many returns. Hopefully this gets disseminated and taken up and improved by lots of you.
And
Thanks.
just on the back of that, that's like a huge reason for the code being shared, is it's a really accessible way to be able to make those updates to what we have. So yeah, we hope that's the key to why we've been wanting to share this out and create as much impact as we can.
Oh, Kirsty, you've got a question?
Can Kirsty unmute? I'm just wondering if people can unmute yet.
Oh, that's okay, Kirsty. Don't worry.
Oh, right.
Okay, a good question from Max, and I'm not sure who wants to field this one, maybe Kitty. Are there any limitations that if you could have had more time, what would you have done based on feedback from external stakeholders?
Oh, we got a lot of feedback. Any of the team members could speak to this really, because it's wide and varied. Like the utility of it at a higher resolution or a finer scale resolution would be really good. Lots of people would like that for smaller parcels of land. Also, like making things like available through APIs would be helpful. Keeping up with the machine learning algorithms, the models that are available out there, even with this MVP regeneration detector that we're releasing, there are new models to try like every few months with that one. So people are suggesting, you could try this model. AI is just going crazy. Does anyone have anything else that they want to suggest for Max?
Yeah, just add a little bit to the resolution chat that you started there, Kitty, because I think that was a common thing we heard throughout our journey is, how accurate can I get? I've just planted a totara in my backyard. Can we pick that up with satellite imagery? And, the answer is always yes, anything is possible. It's all a balance of sort of, how much funding do you have to get that imagery? But from the start, we always set our goals on making something that can be run absolutely anywhere in the country and repeatable. So that was always something that was at top of mind for us. And it created some limitations that we got feedback on, but it might be also, part of our mentor of why that sort of limitation was brought about, which was a little bit different compared to a lot of sort of smaller projects. But yeah, just, a bit of insight there for anyone questioning why didn't we use different type of imagery, etc.
And thanks, Kitty. Maybe just one more from you as well. What is the minimum funding required to keep these tools going and improving, from Richard?
That's a really hard one to answer, not because of privacy reasons, just because it depends on what standard you want to keep them up to. Because Navigator, for example, has many public data sets that are pulled into it, and those all get updated from time to time and need to have somebody pour into them. The detectors we definitely found can be very expensive to develop, especially because the best way to do that is to, of course, work with people on the ground to ground truth the outputs, people who are locals and know what's really there. And so that whole process can be very time consuming. So people time is quite expensive. So if you wanted to keep all of these layers going and the algorithms for the detectors going as well, it could be tens of thousands a month, really, in people time, at least. I don't know if Aaron is here, because Aaron might actually be able to give a better insight into this, but I don't think he's here today. I would echo what Penny also put in the chat, just going back to the question about what did we hear that people wanted? And yeah, quality or like the state of ecosystems was something that people really wanted to be able to monitor. But of course, it's a lot trickier than just measuring the extent of forest cover, like knowing what quality, what condition that forest is in is a whole different approach to training models and what kind of signals you want to be picking up, signatures, etc.
Perhaps I can just expand a bit on Mario's question as well. I know you've addressed this, Kitty, but it's a real problem that I think a lot of people face, where you have a funding grant or project, and then it comes to an end, and a lot of that data and information disappears. I think we don't have that answer per se. This is what we're trying, is making everything open and really hoping that people in this webinar can take the data and continue it and really keep that prospering and doing what we can to try to make that information accessible. But having that sort of insight right at the start of a project to say everything we do in this needs to be publicly accessible by the end, it can help some of the hiccups that you do find at the end of a project when you say, oh, well, I have that, but that actually wasn't available publicly because we got that through an agreement that we didn't specify it would be made public. So, ideally, if you can have that thought right at the start of a project, knowing that'll carry you through, that could probably help a lot in keeping these projects alive after the organization has stopped developing.
Can I add to that, Kevin? Also understanding the need of the next user, so that it is more likely to be picked up and worked with as is or further developed. Like if you have someone you're passing it on to intentionally, you've thought about that from the start, you've got a better chance of a pipeline to a user who's going to get an application out of what you've done. And the other thought, which I'm not sure has been addressed, is if you do take something here from our collection of work and do something with it, perhaps further develop it, it would be awesome if that resulting piece of work was also open access and shared, because then we're building and developing moving forward together and avoiding duplication or backward steps or things being lost. So perhaps consider that we're using whatever platform you can access to continue this ethos and what we're trying to do and build together. Yeah, because as someone rightly mentioned, it's not the end, it's just we're just passing this on, and if everyone does that, the community will be far better off in terms of tools in this space.
Yeah, I'll just add one more comment echoing that, Catherine, about identifying the user need, because that was a cool part of my job, to do a lot of the engagement with our next and end users and actually isolate what that need was. We did a lot of that and trying to ascertain willingness to pay, and I guess there's a real want for it, but it's difficult to pay, especially with all of the money withdrawn from the environmental sector over the past couple of years. So it was sort of like we were circling around a need, but we couldn't identify exactly what the thing was that people were willing to pay enough money for. Okay, any more questions before we wrap up?
I'll add one more thing. This is getting into, some of you will appreciate this. This is getting into the philosophy of environmental monitoring, funding in this country, etc. But the tech that we have used, like the satellite imagery, etc., can be quite expensive. Creating the detectors is an expensive R&D endeavor. And so if there was a central, and we were able to do it because we started out in the public funding space, right? And we had a national mandate. This sort of thing, I think, is necessary for a country of this size because the market is fairly small. So it's important for there to be a public role in creating this sort of technical output at this stage. I'll leave it there, but I think there's a role in that space, and hopefully also others in the space are making things open access as well and building on it. All done with my soapbox.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend. As we've said about 1 billion times, the Refresh website will be live next week, and it'll have the webinar recording, FAQs, the impact report, and hopefully any other resources that you're looking for. So I'll hand over to Corey, to close us.
Kia ora mai anō. Yeah, just to echo what everyone said previously, to wrap up, we're grateful that everyone's who's been able to join us today has been able to attend, and we see like the passion for our taio, and that's reflected in your guys' willingness to come and support us in our closing down, and to uptake the flame that we're passing on, hopefully through these open source tools. So ka nui ngā mihi kia koutou mai I mātou, a eco-index nō reira tēnei te mihi, kia whakahiri, kia hiri mai mō tēnei karakia whakakapi. So I'll just close this off with a closing karakia. Ka whakahiri te ke te kōrero kia wāta taru I muia tātou, kia tūru ki whakatahai, kia tūru ki whakatahai, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.